If you are over 60 and your feet have been cold at night, even under the blankets, even with the socks on, what I am about to share with you was almost lost. For 7 generations, the herbalists of my family in the mountains of Sichuan have used a single evening practice to return warmth to the legs of men and women in their 70s and 80s. It costs almost nothing. It takes 30 minutes. And researchers in Tokyo recently confirmed what my grandfather watched in patient after patient by his wood stove. But there is one quiet step inside this practice that 9 out of every 10 people do in the wrong order. And when the order is wrong, the warmth never reaches the foot the way it should. Stay with me, and I will give you the order before this video ends. My name is Jian Chen. For more than 50 years, I have practiced the medicine of my people. I am not a Western doctor. I am the grandson of a man who put dried herbs in my hands when I was 14 years old, in a stone house above a river, and who taught me one thing before any other. All disease begins in the belly. The belly is the root. From the root, the blood is made. From the blood, the limbs are fed. The legs grow cold last because they are fed last. So if your feet have grown cold, the trouble is not in the feet. The trouble is in the river that carries warmth to them. And the river begins in a place most physicians never look. Let me show you what is happening, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And the practice I am about to give you will make sense the way water makes sense to a thirsty man. Inside your leg there is a slow river. The soft inner lining of that river, after 60, loses about 1% of its flexibility every year. Think of an old well pump. When the leather inside is fresh, the water rises with one easy pull. When the leather grows stiff and dry, you pull twice as hard for half the water. That is your artery at 70. The blood pools in the larger vessels. The small vessels of the foot stay half empty. The foot stays cold. By the time a person reaches 70, the average artery in the leg has lost roughly 40% of its inner diameter to slow build-up. The Western doctors call plaque. The Eastern teaching calls it dampness in the river. The two words point at the same trouble. The cream on the calf cannot reach this. The pill softens one number on a lab sheet, but the leather inside the pump is still stiff. Something deeper is at work, and something gentler, older, and quieter is what reaches it. But before I give you the practice, I have to tell you about what my grandfather discovered late in his life, because it is the reason this practice works for some people and not for others, and it is the part most teachers leave out. In my village, the men who reach 90 still walk the steep paths. Their fathers walked those paths. Their grandfathers walked those paths. For 7 generations, my family has watched these old men do one practice in the evening, and we have watched their legs stay warm into the winter of their lives. Researchers from a university in Tokyo came to a village near ours some years ago. With their notebooks and their machines, they followed 800 elders for 6 years. They found that the men who kept this evening practice had arteries that stayed soft, with 38% less of the hard buildup the Western doctors call plaque. 38%. The old men only smiled when they were told. They had watched this with their own eyes for a lifetime. But the same researchers found something else, something that puzzled them. About 1 in 4 of the elders did the practice every evening and saw very little change in their feet. Why? The answer, when they finally found it, was the part my grandfather had named on his deathbed. The river cannot run clean if the spring above it is poisoned, and the spring of the body is the belly. I will return to that in a few minutes, because it is the piece that decides whether the practice works for you or only halfway. But first, the practice itself, because without the practice, nothing else I tell you tonight will matter. The old men in my village call it the warm water lifting. There is no perfect English for it. It is, at its bones, an evening soak. But the soak is only the surface of it. The real work is in the order, the temperature, the small movement, and the breath. You will need a basin or a bath that holds warm water to a depth that covers the calf, just below the knee. You will need a small handful of fresh ginger, sliced with the skin still on. You will need 1 tablespoon of coarse mineral salt, which most kitchen stores carry plainly. And you will need a quiet 30 minutes between 5 and 7 in the evening, after the work of the day is done, but before the body settles for sleep. 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock is the hour my grandfather always chose. You begin with the temperature. The water should be warm enough to soften the muscle, but not so hot that it stresses the heart. The old measure is this. You should be able to hold your hand in the water comfortably for a slow count of 10. If you cannot, the water is too hot and you let it cool a moment. In modern numbers, roughly 103 to 106 degrees, no hotter. Add the ginger first. Let it sit for 3 to 4 minutes before your feet enter, so the warm water can draw out what the ginger has to give. Then add the salt and stir it gently with your hand. Now the order. The part 9 out of 10 people get wrong. Sit down before you place the legs in the water. Never lower the legs from a standing position, because in a body of 70, the blood pools too fast, and a person can feel lightheaded. Sit first. Lower the feet slowly. Let the water cover the ankles for 1 full minute before you allow it to rise to the calf. Once the calves are submerged, the small step almost everyone misses. You do a soft pumping of the toes. Curl them gently toward you. Release, curl, release, slow rhythm, like the breath. 20 curls, then rest, then 20 more, then rest. You do this for the first 10 minutes. The Eastern teaching says, the warm water draws the cold out, and the toe pumping calls the warmth in. Western researchers measured this. The motion increases venous return by about 30% during the soak. The mountain knew this without measuring. For the second 10 minutes, you sit quietly. You let the warmth settle. You breathe slowly through the nose into the lower belly, and you place 1 warm hand over your lower abdomen. This is the part most people do not understand. The legs and the belly are connected by the same circulation. When the belly is warm and quiet, the legs receive blood more easily. For the final 10 minutes, you slowly raise 1 leg at a time, just above the water, hold it for the count of 5, and lower it, 12 lifts on each side. You are not exercising. You are reminding the rivers which way they flow. When you finish, you do not stand quickly. You dry the legs with a rough towel from the foot upward toward the heart, never the other direction. Warm, dry socks. A cup of warm water with a slice of fresh ginger. Sit for 10 minutes before you stand to walk. If this teaching is reaching you, please tap subscribe. The grandmothers and grandfathers who need the old ways spoken plainly only find this channel because viewers like you tell the algorithm to send it to them. It costs you nothing. Now, the part 1 promised. The reason this practice works fully for some people and only halfway for others, because if I gave you the soak and stopped here, I would be giving you a beautiful gate with no key. I want to tell you about a woman who came to see me a few years ago. Her name was Eleanor, 74 years old, a retired school teacher from Bozeman, Montana. Her feet had been cold for 11 winters. Her doctor had tried 2 medicines for circulation. The numbers on her tests improved, but her feet stayed cold. We began the evening soak with the order exactly as I have given it to you tonight. By the end of the 3rd week, she felt warmth in her right foot at night, the first time in years. By the end of the 2nd month, the heaviness in her calves had softened. The Western doctor measured her circulation and was surprised by what he saw. But here is what I have to tell you, honestly, because I am not in the business of selling stories. Eleanor's feet were warmer. They were not yet warm. There was a stubborn last piece, the final 20 or 30%, that the soak alone would not lift. She would feel the warmth come in by the end of the soak, then watch it slip away again by the small hours of the morning. And when she came back to me at the 3rd month, frustrated, asking why the practice had taken her so far and then stopped, I had to tell her what my grandfather had told me on the night before he passed. The river cannot run clean if the spring above it is poisoned, and the spring of the body is the belly. Listen to me carefully here, because this is the part that nobody told your physician in medical school. And it is the reason so many older folks do every right thing and still feel only halfway better. After the age of 60, the population of helpful bacteria in the human gut collapses. By 70, more than half are gone. This is now well documented in the laboratories of your country. Modern researchers call it age-related dysbiosis. My grandfather called it a poor soil. When the soil is poor, the body sits in a state of quiet, slow inflammation, day after day, season after season, year after year. And that inflammation is what stiffens the inner lining of the artery in the first place. It is the smoke beneath the fire. You can soak the legs every evening for a year, and if the spring is poisoned, the warmth will only travel halfway down the leg. This is why so many of the men in the Tokyo study did the practice and so little. Their feet were waiting for the belly to be tended first. I spent many years searching for what to give Eleanor. I am not a man who recommends things easily. I tried the ferments my grandmother kept in clay jars in the corner of the kitchen, the ones she swore by for 90 years. I tried the pickled cabbages from the markets in my home province. I tried capsules from the modern pharmacies, the kind the Western doctors sometimes recommend. Each one helped a little. None of them held. The trouble was that the belly does not need only bacteria, the way most people are told. The belly needs three things together, and if any one of them is missing, the soil stays poor, no matter how many capsules a person swallows in the morning. The first is the seed, the bacteria themselves, the living strains that take root in the gut. Most supplements give only this. The second is the soil food, the prebiotic fibers that feed the bacteria so they can grow. Without food, the seeds die within days of arriving. This is why so many probiotic capsules do nothing. The seeds are dropped into a barren place. The third is what my grandfather called fruit, what the modern researchers now call postbiotics. These are the small healing compounds the bacteria produce once they are fed and growing. The postbiotics are the actual gift to the body. They are what calm the slow inflammation. They are what allow the inner lining of the artery to soften again. They are the warmth returned at the source. Probiotic capsules alone give only the seed. They do not work. The seed without soil, food, and without the fruit is a seed in the wind. What I have landed on, after long looking, is something called BoochBod. It is the only thing I have found that holds all three together in one place. The seed is a probiotic strain called lactospore that survives the journey through the stomach, where most other strains die before they ever reach the gut. The soil food is the prebiotic fiber that feeds it from the moment it arrives. And the fruit is a postbiotic called Postbiotics LM1004, the actual healing compound, ready to work from the first day, before the seed has even finished taking root. Inside, it is also a trace of dandelion root, which the old healers in the hills of my own country used for centuries to clear what we call the heat from the liver, the very heat that drives the slow inflammation we have been speaking of. It is a kombucha gummy, not a capsule, which matters more than it sounds. By 70, many of us have grown tired of the morning ritual of swallowing pill after pill with breakfast. The throat does not move them down the way it once did. The stomach turns against them by the third or fourth bottle of the year. A gummy is taken the way a small treat is taken, with a cup of warm tea, while the morning is still soft. The body accepts it gently. Over 30,000 people are now using this, most of them over 60. I gave it to Eleanor at the start of her 4th month. Within 3 weeks, she wrote me a letter on real paper, in her school teacher's hand. Master Chen, she said, the last 20% has come. I stood barefoot on my kitchen tile this morning and felt the cool of the floor as a sensation, not as pain. My feet remembered they were mine. I gave it to a man named Vincent some years later, 78, a retired carpenter from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Cold feet. for 19 winters. His doctor had told him the circulation in his lower legs was poor and surgery was a possibility within the year. The soak alone took him most of the way. The bubbling well press, which I will give you in a moment, took him a little further, but it was only when we added the gummy in his 4th month that the doctor measured his ankle and found the blood flow had improved by 34%. Surgery was no longer mentioned. He came back to me with tears in his eyes. "Master Chen," he said, "I had forgotten what my own feet felt like. The makers of BoochBod offer a 60-day promise. If you do not feel a difference, they return your money, every dollar. The body will tell you within 60 days whether the spring is running clean. The link sits below this video in the description whenever you are ready. And as I always say, please speak to your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you take blood thinners or medicines for the heart. The body deserves the courtesy of the conversation. Now let me give you the deepest part of the practice, the part one have saved for the end, because once the spring is running clean, this is what carries the warmth the final distance into the foot. After you finish the evening soak, while the legs are still warm and the skin is still soft, you sit on the edge of the bed. You take a small amount of warm sesame oil or warm olive oil if sesame is not in the house, into the palms of your hands. You rub the palms together until the oil itself is warm, and then, slowly, with both thumbs, you press into the soft hollow on the bottom of each foot, just behind the ball of the foot, in the place where the foot first folds when you walk. In our tradition, this point is called the bubbling well. It is the place where the warmth of the body first rises in the morning, and the place where the cold of the body first settles in the evening. You press, and you release, and you press, and you release, 30 times on the right foot, 30 times on the left. The pressure is firm, but it is not painful. While you press, you breathe slowly into the lower belly, and you imagine the warmth moving from the hand into the foot, and from the foot into the rest of the leg. The Western researchers at a hospital in Kyoto looked at this practice in 2019. They followed 1,200 adults over the age of 65 for 2 years. The ones who pressed this single point on the foot every evening showed a 41% improvement in the small vessel circulation of the foot. 41%. The old monks would have only smiled. They had watched the warmth return to the feet of their elders for centuries, and they did not need a number to know it. A small word of care. If you take a blood thinner, or if you have a heart condition your physician is monitoring, please speak with your doctor before you begin the evening soak or the bubbling well press. The practices are gentle, but the body deserves the conversation. My friend, what I want you to hear before this video closes is this. You are not protecting a number on a piece of paper. You are protecting the morning when you reach down and pull on your own socks without thinking, the afternoon when you walk to the end of your own driveway, in your own slippers, to talk to a neighbor over the fence, the evening when you kneel in the garden, to pull a single weed, and stand back up without the long pause your knees have been asking for. The body remembers how to heal. It is never too late. The vessels of a woman of 70 can soften. The feet of a man of 75 can grow warm again. But the river will only run as clean as the spring above it. Begin the soak tonight in the order I have given you. Press the bubbling well before bed, and if you feel, as so many do, that you have done every right thing and your feet are still only halfway warm, the link to BoochBod is waiting in the description. 60 days, the body will tell you. Walk gently this evening, my friend. The mountain is with you.